do you think you are doing?" I jolted out of my daydream and looked up, blinking. Mrs. Fitzgibbon snatched the pale pink silk from my hands and studied my work before turning her cold eyes back on me. "What is this?" I winced. The seam was a disaster, but I hadn't eaten since an ungodly hour long before dawn, and it had been easy to fall into another daydream about my father. This one, thanks to my empty belly, involving food. My family and friends gathered around me as we stuffed ourselves with a grand feast. We were in a big open room with sunlight streaming in the windows. Laughter and happiness swelled as we inhaled the mouth-watering aromas of roasted meats and vegetables. My best friend Tom sat beside his heart's desire, who laughed with him as they leaned into each other, squeezing hands. My mother, at one end of the long table, wore a grin that split her face in an expression of pure happiness as she gazed at my father at the other end. My father. In this conjuring, he was a king of a faraway land, who wore a dazzling crown heavy with enormous jewels, gazed at my mother with adoration. It had been nice while it lasted, but it was just a fantasy. I'd never met my father, which was why I imagined him as every kind of man from the cruel, gnarled pirate to the handsome, benevolent king. All tricks of my imagination. None of it mattered. At least that's what I tried to convince myself. And it definitely wasn't real. Because I didn't have a father. What I did have was a sewing needle that had developed a mind of its own and decided to journey in a meandering path across the fabric. My empty stomach gave a pathetic lurch and shrank away as I pasted an apologetic expression on my face. "Sorry, Mrs. Fitzgibbons, I'll... Off with you, you wretched, useless girl!" She spun away from me, heaved her body down on her shabby armchair, shoved her spectacles up the long slope of her nose, and tugged at the thread of the seam I had just ruined. I was never cut out to be a seamstress, but as much as I dreamed of having a different life, this was mine. I clenched my fists in my lap. "I'm truly Get out!" Mrs. Fitzgibbon snapped. "But out!" I stared at her, mouth open. No idea what to do. Mrs. Fitzgibbons hated me, but she'd never actually thrown me out before. My mother glided in from the storeroom, more yards of silk layered in her arms. She looked from me to Mrs. Fitzgibbons, her eyes going wide. "What happened?" "This child is useless, Mary. Useless!" Mrs. Fitzgibbons yanked violently on the threads. Unlike our employer, who was tall, all sharp, mean angles and knobby elbows, my mother was smaller and softer around the edges. Even after 17 years of toiling in this shop, Mamma had retained her classic beauty, with her blonde hair peeking out from beneath her cap, her cornflower blue eyes, and her naturally pink cheeks. She looked much younger than her 36 years,